Hello and welcome to another program with Pastor Frank Lewis. And we are going to talk today about another aspect of raising emotionally healthy children. And we're going to talk today about fathers that are emotionally wounded and fathers that have unresolved emotional pain. And then we're going to talk about that's both ends of the spectrum. Because when fathers are emotionally wounded and have unresolved emotional pain, they are usually going to be either passive or they're going to be angry. They're somewhere in between, of course. It's on a continuum. But the point of the matter is, if I show you the two ends of the spectrum, what's going to happen is you're going to have a much better idea about which kind of father you are, which kind of father you've been, which kind of father you'd like to be in the future by going back and reviewing last week, or the week before actually, the ideal father. What does an ideal father look like? One that is really able to raise healthy children. But today we're going to look at the unresolved emotional pain that fathers are carrying. But before we do, I want to talk to you about this book, because this book is the book that I wrote. It is called The Key. What is it the key to? It's the key to being able to be emotionally healed. And that's why I'm doing this today. I'm doing this today so that fathers can see how they will affect their children if they don't get their pain resolved and get emotionally healed. That's why I wrote the book. The whole reason I wrote the book is because there is a key, there's an understanding of how to get emotionally healed. The other thing that I have available that you can use for information that you may want to go to is the YouTube channel that I have, and the name of it is at Fortifying Families 4. At Fortifying Families 4. I know that's a little strange, but the reason it is because somebody else had the name Fortifying Families. So that's how we did it. On there, you're going to find 21 videos on marriage and about 5 or 6 videos on parenting. Eventually, there'll be approximately 20 videos on parenting. But today, we're going to talk specifically about fathers. Last week, we talked about mothers, but that were unemotional, that had unresolved emotional pain. I'll get that out. Had unresolved emotional pain, and that were emotionally wounded. Today, we're going to talk about fathers that have unresolved emotional pain and are wounded. And so it's going to help you a lot, I really believe, and it's going to make a difference in how you raise your children. Unresolved emotional pain that fathers carry, and that because they've been emotionally wounded, all the time comes from the way they were raised. And the problem is that fathers that are emotionally wounded raise children to be emotionally wounded. And that's the problem. That's why I'm doing this. That's the whole reason for writing this book and doing these videos that will eventually become a book called The Parent's Playbook. So everything that happens with a father that is emotionally wounded and has unresolved emotional pain is going to affect their children. It's going to affect the atmosphere in the house. It's going to cause children who are always going to be tuned in to what are the father's moods. What is he, is he upset? Is he sad? Is he happy? Whatever. because children have to survive. And in order to survive, they need many times to be very in tune, or most of the time to be very in tune with their father's and their mother's emotional moods. And so they need to find that out, because that's going to affect them. And it's going to end up affecting them in ways that, you're going to be surprised to hear about. But fathers that are emotionally wounded usually were abandoned. They have trauma in their lives. They were betrayed, rejected, or in some way hurt, and they carry that because it's not been resolved. That's why I wrote the book. That's why I do the groups that I do, because we help people, mostly men and sometimes women, but a lot men, to get emotional healing so they can have a better life and do better for their children. Men that are emotionally wounded are usually going to be, as I mentioned to you in the beginning, are going to be on a spectrum. They're going to be either very passive or they're going to be angry. So we're going to talk first about raising children by a father that is emotionally wounded. Then we're going to talk about passive fathers and angry fathers. So we're going to find out that emotionally wounded fathers, the ones that have not dealt with their emotional pain or have unresolved emotional pain, are going to cause instability, anxiety, and they're going to cause their children to actually walk on eggshells, because they don't know whether they're going to be affectionate or whether they're going to be, hurting them. And it's a horrible way to live. It's the way that I lived, and I'm going to talk more about that because my father was very angry. And so when we get to that part of it, I'm going to share with you about that. They are going to be causing their children, because they're actually having the behavior that they do because they are afraid, they're fearful, they are afraid of not measuring up. Fathers are. These are the fathers I'm talking about, not the kids right now. The fathers are afraid of failure. And so they bring that into the whole aspect of raising children. They are oftentimes feeling inadequate. So they felt like they couldn't measure up to their fathers. And so here we sit, here they are with being emotionally wounded and not having dealt with their pain. And so they are going to cause real problems for their children. Their children are not going to be very secure. They're going to have insecurity. They're going to have shame. They're going to have they're going to feel that love or attention is earned. That it's not unconditional. It's very conditional. They're going to struggle with expressing their emotions. Why? Because dad is in a place of being able, he's up one time, down the other. He just has unregulated emotions. So the children are going to have problems knowing what to do with their emotions. Should they express them? Should they not express them? Should they repress them? Should they not have any emotions at all and be numb? They're going to have a problem with that. Then it's going to be a problem. So that's going to cause the children not to know exactly what's happening with their fathers, because unresolved emotional pain is manifested by fathers in their emotions. Wounded fathers are going to be emotional one side or the other. They're not going to be up, like I said, or down, and it's going to cause the children problems. But first of all, we're going to talk about passive fathers, because that's one side of the spectrum. And so passive fathers have a real effect on their children because they're emotionally shut down. They are living in the house, but they're not really present. They're not present for their children. They don't know how to be present. They really learn themselves to avoid conflict, and they are withdrawn, and they really don't know how to be able to use, to express their emotions. And so their children are going to be having problems expressing their emotions. And so they're not connecting with their children. They are there, but they're not really connecting. And children need to be connected to. They need to be able to know that they're loved, accepted, and appreciated, but these fathers can't do that because they don't know how to be able to express their emotions, and they don't know how to love. And so they cause the children who are supposed to look to a father for guidance and for stability to be very unstable, and it's going to cause a problem. They're going to feel like they're unseen. Children that are raised by unemotionally available fathers shut down fathers are going to feel unseen. They're not going to feel known. They're not going to feel that dad's present. And so even though they crave affection, they're going to get many times indifference, and they're going to get distance. Fathers that don't know how to express emotions are not going to do well with children that are craving attention, because they don't know how to give them attention because they never got attention themselves. And so children are going to suppress their emotions and their emotional needs. And they're going to be children are going to have a problem thinking that love is to be, it's just to be conditional. Love is going to be conditional, and it's going to have to be earned. And so these children that are raised by unemotionally available fathers are ones that become caretakers. They become caretakers. They become high achievers. They attempt to fill the void by doing things rather than being. And so it's a real problem for children with shut down fathers. And sons will have a difficult time raised by fathers that are unemotionally available. They'll have a difficult time expressing their emotions because their dad doesn't express his emotions. And they'll believe that manhood, being a man, is really to be a man that doesn't express emotions, that doesn't have feelings, that is stoic and really uninvolved with their children. And that's what they're going to believe. And so that's what they're going to end up doing with their children. They're going to be they're going to be involved in relationships as an adult where there's very hard to connect. It's very hard to connect to this kind of a child that is raised by an unemotionally available father, because the child is going to actually not be able to express their emotions, and so they'll look to repeat exactly what their father has done. And so sons will be sometimes resentful, and they'll be sad. This will be below conscious thought. This will be unconscious, and they won't have the tools. See, I have people in my groups that have been raised by unemotionally available fathers, and they just don't have the tools. They're shut down themselves. they raise children to be shut down, particularly sons. And so it really is difficult for children to be raised by shut down fathers, because they're just going to repeat what their fathers did. And that's what I have in my groups as many times. They're going to repeat the disconnection. They're going to repeat the unavailability. And, it's not going to make for a good life. But one of these people in my groups recently told me that they really are resentful of the fact that they didn't get the tools. And so their life has just been black and white, not colorful. They don't have emotions. Emotions bring color. Emotions bring life. Emotions bring excitement. And lack of emotions, numbness, that kind of thing doesn't bring life. It's not life-giving. It just becomes black and white. And one of these people said to me that they were very saddened by their pitiful life, about how little they were able to enjoy life, and so it wasn't great to hear that. And so daughters, they feel unworthy and rejected by shut down fathers. They end up it erodes their value and their confidence, and they believe that love is in validation are based on what they do, not who they are. And so fathers that are unemotionally available cause a daughter to be drawn to an unemotionally available man. Daughters are gonna look for men that are unemotionally available when they're raised by one, because that's what they're familiar with. That's what they have experienced themselves. And so that's what they're going to look for. And that's just going to perpetuate the whole thing and cause their children, the grandchildren, to be either shut down and just not emotionally available. Daughters will become overly accommodating when they have not received the love from their shut down fathers. And what happens is they can get hurt. If a daughter becomes over accommodating, to get love, to get acceptance, to get approval, what's going to happen is, and I have many of these women in my groups, is that they get to get their emotions and love, they end up getting hurt. They end up getting taken advantage of. They end up being attracted to narcissists. And we're not going to talk about that today. We're going to talk about that next time. But they really can get hurt, and it's a very bad thing. And so what we want to do is realize that's one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is an angry father. Oh boy. I'm real familiar with an angry father because I was raised by one. And an angry father is someone that really causes problems with safety. My father raised me, and I was never felt safe. Not from the day I was born. I don't think I felt safe, because my father was very angry. He was angry because his father was angry. Well, guess what? I became angry too. And that's not what you want to do as a father. You don't want to be angry because you'll alienate your children, which I did, and I have. And so it's a environment where it's tense, it's unpredictable, and it's unsafe. And that's not the way children are supposed to be raised. By the way, I didn't have a childhood. I was constantly, hypervigilant, trying to figure out what Dad was going to do, how he was going to do it, so I could protect myself. Maybe if I did the right thing, or if I did something, then Dad wouldn't trigger and go into his angry rages. My dad wasn't just angry, he was a rageaholic. And it came from his childhood, but it certainly didn't do me any benefit. And my sister actually my sister is she is mentally incapacitated because of my father. She can survive. I mean, she's, she gets along, but it's just not, she'd never been married, and it's a real mess. And she's an older woman now, and she doesn't do well. She's paranoid, schizophrenic, and OCD. That's not good. So there's no stability with this kind of a situation. There is no predictability. You don't know what's going to happen, when Dad's going to be upset or when he's going to be kind. Not kind. I don't know that my dad was ever kind. Well, maybe he was, but it just was totally unpredictable. And, one of the problems is that I was afraid of my dad. I was so afraid of my dad when he even went and blew up at my mother or my sister, particularly my sister. He had some real problems with my sister because she resisted him. And so I, like I said, became hypervigilant. And I carried that all the way into adulthood. I was hypervigilant even in adulthood. And so I was always looking for what was Dad going to do. I was hypervigilant, trying to figure out. And as I got into adulthood, what ended up happening is I was hypervigilant because I didn't want to be hurt anymore. I've been really, really hurt by my father, and I didn't want to be hurt anymore. So I became hypervigilant. I lived with anxiety. I had sleep issues that were very real. I couldn't wake up to go to the bathroom, so I wet my bed till I was 14. It was really rough. And it was because I lived in fear, and I was totally afraid, and I lived in terror. I lived in terror. It was like being in some sort of a concentration camp, being raised in my family. I never knew. Dad would come to the dinner table, and I never knew who was going to get, blown up at that night. Well, who was he going to get angry with? Me, my sister, or my mother? And that's all there was. So he took it out on us, and so as I said, I had such sleep issues that I wet my bed. And of course, what ended up happening is I had more anger from my dad, but I was also shamed by him. And it caused a great deal of shame, and it was very, very difficult. Angry fathers communicate by yelling, screaming, getting upset, expressing their emotions in rage. And so they have problems controlling they have problems now. They have real problems controlling their emotions, but they have real problems regulating their emotions. That's what I was looking for, regulating their emotions. So guess what? I had problems regulating my emotions. I was an angry man just like my father. I realized that anger could protect me. It could keep me from being hurt, but it also destroyed relationships, and my kids suffered very badly. And so it was hard for my kids. And so anger, I thought, was power. I knew that I could use anger and I could push people away, so that was very, very important. And as a son, I didn't do well with my kids. And daughters that are raised by angry men suppress their emotions because they want to avoid conflict. And so they, as adults, I became aggressive, just like my father. And, daughters will actually end up, being afraid. They'll be afraid to confront. And so they'll be taken advantage of by men because they just can't confront. They don't have good boundaries. My dad was a total boundary buster. So a daughter raised by an angry man is going to have very difficult problems with boundaries. What's really strange about it is there's some affection, but it's intertwined with rage. How can that be? That's going to make for a real problem for a child. Child is confused and insecure. Maybe if I was better, a child thinks, if I was better, then I could end up being, maybe dad wouldn't rage at me. There's self-blame problems, you know. Why, maybe what I'm doing is causing dad to rage. There's chronic stress. There is, you know, it can actually weaken a child's immune system or an adult's immune system that end up with rage like I did. And they live in fear and anxiety, which I did for sure. And they have control. And they believe that control and intimidation, this is what I believe, was a way to be able to keep myself from being hurt. And so children that are raised by angry fathers, they lose their voice because they are not comforted, they're not validated, so they suppress their individuality, and they also suppress their creativity. And so they end up not being the people that God created them to be. They have a lack of trust, they have emotional wounds, and they end up being like their angry fathers. So I've talked to you about emotional wounded fathers, I've talked to you about angry fathers, I've talked to you about passive fathers. Why have I done this? What is this all about? Because I want you to realize that you have an opportunity to change how you respond to your children by becoming emotionally healed. If you'll become emotionally healed or more emotionally healed, you'll have a better result with your children. And that's what you want. You want to raise healthy, emotionally healthy children, but you can't do it if you are angry or if you're passive, you have unhealed emotions. You can't do it. So that's why I've done this. I've given you an opportunity to look at what happens when you don't get emotionally healed, and you're going to take it out. You're going to cause your children to have problems for the rest of their lives. I used to have problems. I don't now because I've done so much work. And you can do the work too. You can get the book. I'm going to have this available. You can be a great dad. You can raise healthy children